Right now, there's probably a tub sitting in your fridge that says butter on it, and you have no idea it isn't butter, legally, chemically, factually. Land O'Lakes, Country Crock, even Kerrygold. Some of the most recognizable names on the shelf are selling something completely different under that same word. Nobody's deliberately lying to you, but the label certainly isn't rushing to correct you either. I'm going to walk through 7 cases where the word butter doesn't mean what you think it means, and 3 where what's on the label really is all there is. Let's start with one simple rule that will answer 90% of your shelf questions without me. Real butter is 2 ingredients, cream and salt. If it's salted, it's 3. Cream, salt, and culture for some varieties. If the ingredient list has more than 3 items, it's not butter in the classic sense. And here's an interesting fact most people don't know. This rule is literally law. Back in 1923, the U.S. Congress passed an act establishing that only a product containing at least 80% milk fat can be called butter. Nothing has changed since then. It's still the standard in effect today. And since 1919, the USDA has officially graded butter quality. And to this day, around 30 licensed taste testing inspectors work across the country, checking around 200 butter samples a week for taste, smell, and texture to assign one of 3 grades, AA, A, or B. Grade AA means the most pleasant, cleanest flavor made from fresh, low-acidity cream. Grade B is the lowest grade a product can still be sold under, often made from soured cream with a crumbly or watery texture. If you see USDA Grade AA on a package, that's a real third-party verified rating. Keep both rules in mind as we go. Cream plus salt and 80% fat as the legal minimum. Number 7, Land O'Lakes butter with canola oil. This is a separate product line sitting on the same shelf, in the same yellow packaging with the Farmer Co-op logo. But flip the package over and the ingredients are pasteurized cream, canola oil, salt. The light version has a longer list: water, butter, canola oil, buttermilk, modified starch, mono and diglycerides, PGPR, emulsifiers that hold the water and fat together, lactic acid, potassium sorbate, and sodium benzoate as preservatives, flavoring, xanthan gum, and beta-carotene for color. This is already a butter and vegetable oil spread with a full set of stabilizers needed precisely because oil and milk fat don't naturally stay together without help. The company isn't hiding this. It's right there on the label. But the name Land O'Lakes butter on the box, sitting right next to regular butter from the same brand, is exactly the moment a distracted hand grabs the wrong thing. If this is what's in your fridge right now, don't panic. It's not poison. Just next time, look for the word spreadable or with canola oil on the package. That's your signal. It's a different category of product, not classic butter. By the way, oil isn't the only thing that can quietly end up in butter's ingredient list. In 2021, Canada had a full-blown scandal that later got nicknamed Buttergate. People across the country started complaining that their butter had stopped softening at room temperature. It stayed hard even after sitting out all day. Journalists ran a lab analysis on 17 butter brands and found that some dairy farms had started supplementing cows' feed with palmitic acid, a derivative of palm oil, to boost the milk's fat content. Interestingly, a researcher at the University of Guelph didn't find a strong link between the amount of that acid and a given butter's actual hardness, so the theory only held up partially. And the key point? Feeding cows palm supplements doesn't break any law and doesn't change the overall saturated fat content of the butter. The takeaway is that even what a cow eats can quietly change a product you've been buying under the same name year after year. Number 6, Danish Creamery. A name that sounds like Denmark, with an address on the package that reads Dublin, California. The name has an honest origin. Back in 1895, Danish immigrants in Fresno, California, founded a co-op modeled on the ones they'd left behind. That's where the name comes from. But 130 years later, most shoppers read Danish and think not of California immigrant farmers, but of Denmark as the country of origin, even though the butter has never been made in Europe. The European style label on this brand's line just refers to a higher fat percentage and a culturing method borrowed from European tradition, not the geography of where it's made. That doesn't mean the butter is bad, quite the opposite. The brand is upfront about its high fat content and tells its real history honestly on its website if you go looking. The trap is that the name on the shelf works faster than research. The eye sees Danish, the brain adds Europe, and the packaging never corrects that impression. If a brand name can create a false impression about geography, the product name itself can create a false impression about what's inside. And that's the next trap. Number 5. Any butter labeled whipped or spreadable. And it's worth telling these two words apart because they sound similar but mean different things. Whipped on its own is an honest category. It's just air whipped into regular butter. The ingredients stay the same. 2 items. Spreadable, though, is a different story. For example, in the challenge lineup, there's a separate whipped butter with the ingredients cream and salt, and a separate spreadable butter with canola oil, where canola oil is added to that same butter so it stays soft when cold. The names on the shelf sound almost identical. The packaging looks similar, but what's inside is different. The price per ounce on the spreadable version is often higher than the regular tub, even though it contains less actual milk fat per gram of product. Grab the whipped version if you want air without changing the ingredients. And the word spreadable, or with canola oil, next to a brand name, is your signal to flip the package over, because there's almost certainly added oil in there. Now let's move from wordplay tricks to a product that doesn't even claim to be dairy, even though the word butter stays printed in big letters on the package. Number 4. Any plant butter, or dairy-free butter, based on palm and canola oil like Country Crock plant butter. This one involves a legal gray area the industry itself admits is a problem. This product is 79% vegetable oil, mostly palm and canola, with pea protein added for texture. There's not a drop of dairy in it. The dairy industry has publicly pushed the FDA to require these products be renamed palm and canola butter instead of dairy-free butter, precisely because the word butter creates an association with a creamy dairy product that simply isn't there. The FDA is still reviewing the issue and hasn't issued a final ruling. If you're deliberately choosing a plant-based alternative, that's a perfectly fine choice. The problem is when someone grabs it thinking they're buying a dairy product with less of something unhealthy and instead gets a product of an entirely different nature. So if you see the words plant-based, dairy-free, or vegan next to the word butter, that's your cue to stop and read the first ingredient. If the first ingredient is oil, not cream, you're not holding butter. The next one surprised me personally the most because it's a brand people trust specifically for its clean ingredient list. Number 3, Kerrygold Unsalted, the unsalted variety specifically. This is a case where even a brand with a strong reputation has an ingredient list shoppers don't expect. Kerrygold has spent years being associated with the phrase real Irish butter, and the salted version really is just cream and salt. But flip over the unsalted package and you'll see a different list. Pasteurized cream, skim milk, cultures. Skim milk in an unsalted butter's ingredients isn't what a shopper expects when they reach for Kerrygold specifically for its nothing extra reputation. The most likely reason is technical. Adding cultures to skim milk separately is a simpler way to get that characteristic cultured flavor than culturing the cream itself before turning it into butter. The bottom line is the same either way. 2 tubs from the same brand, 1 name on the package, 2 different ingredient lists, and you'd only know by flipping the box over. Grab the salted version if just cream is the principle that matters most to you, and check the ingredients every time, even with a favorite brand. 1 name on the package doesn't guarantee the same recipe inside. Which brings us to a question about who's actually behind the name on the package. Number 2, Vermont Creamery Cultured Butter, a brand that looks like a small farm but is actually part of a billion-dollar corporation. The packaging is full of warm language about a Vermont family farm, photos of green pastures, a founding story going back to 1984, started by two farmers. All of that is true. The company really was founded by Bob Rice and Allison Hooper, and the product really is made at that same farm in Websterville. But since 2017, Vermont Creamery has been owned by Land O'Lakes, the same billion-dollar corporation whose canola oil spread we covered in spot number 7. Land O'Lakes bought Vermont Creamery and left the brand, packaging, and production almost untouched, so on the shelf it still looks like an independent little operation. That doesn't mean the butter is lower quality. The company points out that the team and production stayed in place. But if it genuinely matters to you to buy from an independent small producer rather than a large corporation, it's worth knowing that a pretty label can sit in front of the very same conglomerate whose product you just decided to skip on the shelf. And finally, a trick that existed long before big corporations started buying up small farms, and long before the word canola ever showed up in the food industry. Number 1, I can't believe it's not butter, and similar buttery spreads in tubs designed to look like butter. This is the oldest trick in the aisle, and that's exactly why it still works. Ingredients: water, soybean oil, palm and palm kernel oils, salt, soy lecithin, flavorings. Not a drop of cream. Interestingly, the brand itself openly states this isn't even legally margarine. Under FDA standards, margarine has to contain at least 80% fat, and this product has less than that. So technically, it falls into its own separate spread category. The name on the package straight up says not butter, which is probably the most honest name on this whole list. The trap here isn't deception by the manufacturer. It's habit. The tub, the shape, the yellow color all mimic butter sitting right next to it on the shelf. And the hand grabs out of habit. My own mother once mixed up margarine for butter exactly this way, just because the packaging looked the same. It's a legitimate product with its own history and uses. But confusing it with butter means confusing two different things that behave differently in baking and frying and have completely different ingredients. If a recipe calls for butter and you grab a spread by mistake, what comes out of the oven will be different. Look at the first word in the ingredient list. Cream means butter. Any oil means not butter, no matter what's printed in big letters on the front. Before we get to what to buy, here's how to test any butter in your kitchen right now. No chemistry kit required. All you need is your tub of butter and 12 minutes. Take the butter out of the fridge and set it on a plate at room temperature. Real butter with a high milk fat content will soften evenly across the whole piece in about 10 to 15 minutes and stay slightly glossy on the surface. A butter spread with added oil and water will soften unevenly. The edges will go nearly liquid while the center is still firm, and the surface tends to look matte rather than naturally glossy. If you see that second pattern, go back to the ingredient list and check what comes right after the word cream. Before I get to what I actually buy, one more number for context. The average American eats about 6 pounds of butter a year. That's almost 3 kilograms per person, and that number has only been climbing in recent years. At that volume of consumption, the difference between real butter and a substitute on your counter adds up a lot faster than it seems. So here are 3 options where what's on the label really is everything. First, Vital Farms pasture-raised butter. Ingredients: pasteurized cream for the unsalted version, pasteurized cream and salt for the salted one. Nothing else. Available at most major U.S. grocery chains, priced mid-range, not premium. Second, Kerrygold salted. Stays classic. Cream and salt. Traditional Irish production method. Look for Product of Ireland on the package to make sure you're getting that exact version. Third, the budget pick. Any big store's own private label butter, where the package simply says cream, salt, and nothing more, and clearly states a milk fat percentage of at least 80. The point here is that cheap doesn't mean bad, as long as the ingredient list is short and transparent. Before reaching for a premium brand out of habit, check whether your store's own brand meets that same simple rule. Send this video to your mom, or your daughter, or a friend who grabs the same tub off the shelf every week and has never once flipped it over to see what's actually written there, so she knows what she's holding before it goes in the cart.